Welcome to the Golf Coach Podcast. How you going, Alex? What's going on, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on. I'm very well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I'm recovering from the COVID, but I'm doing all right other than that. It's, you know what? I'm surrounded by Alexes at the minute. Did you know that?
Yeah, well,
They're everywhere.
that's not a bad thing.
They're not. Lots of good people. Well, my editor's an Alex, so he's listening to this. And then just had Alex Moore released, Alex Riggs and Alex Clapp come on. Buckner, yes. So what's been going on, mate? What have you been up to?
It's just coming into season here, mate. So just getting busy with some players. The online stuff's still doing what it's doing. So yeah, just busy, but never complain when I'm busy. Just get on with it and keep pushing through.
Just keep fixing the next person in front of you. Hey, how many?
Just try.
How many kids you got?
In terms of
kids, your family kids.
Oh,
yeah,
one.
What's the name?
Yeah, Artie. He's 3.
You know what? I was going to name my youngest Art. We went with Ari.
Yeah.
Very
nice.
Very close. Jeez.
Ari Gold, Entourage.
Well, that's what everyone tells me, and I've never actually watched it.
It's suicide if you've never watched it, mate.
I'm sorry, I haven't.
If you've not watched it, you will potentially look at a different way how you look at your son. That's for sure.
Hey, people who know my history, listening to this, would not be, not surprised by my old lifestyle. So, whereabouts are you?
Southwest England, kind of it's a place called Somerset. It's not huge, but that's the county that I'm in.
Yeah, no.
It's Somerset, just kind of south of Bristol, really. Just a bigger place that's near me.
Have you always been there?
Yeah, always been here. I lived here from a young age. Went over to the States, played college golf over in Florida for 4 years, and then come home and been here kind of ever since.
Oh, nice one. Always come back home, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to stay in Florida, and I've still got visions of going out there and doing kind of seasonal stuff out there or seasonal stuff somewhere.
Yeah.
Just to get away from the dreaded cold weather that we get here.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I obviously in Australia, and
yeah,
I could count on my hand how many times I've seen snow. Like I just have no anticipation, and this is just me personally looking at it, and I just feel like if it is that type of snowing weather, I'm losing each day. So what I mean by that is, like, if I'm involved in snow for 30% of my life, I feel like I've lost 30% of my life. And I know that's not a very good way of looking at it, but I live near the beach. Every day I can do something in Australia. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I get that vibe. It's when it does snow, you can't do anything because there's no slopes here to actually ski.
Yes.
Really. So you're just literally stuck.
Just making snow.
There's nothing to do. Yeah, making snow, man.
Hey, before we get into some stuff, let's not drag on about this. Tell me about Live PGA Tour. What do you reckon?
It was always going to happen, I think. I mean, I think that a lot of people are trying to defend, it's not Live joining PGA, it's the PIF joining the PGA. And I think it boils down to, it was just about to get to the facts and the figures of PGA's books and the Liv's books and where certain money might come from. And they just didn't want them opened. So it was like, okay, we might have to come to some sort of agreement so that the American government kind of come and investigate us. Well,
that's yes.
Well, I think that could have something to do with it.
Yeah, because for me, people saying like this, the commissioner, I watched all his stuff for the survival of the PGA Tour. For me, the PGA Tour is fine. It didn't need from what we see, it doesn't need more money. It doesn't need.
I think the PGA Tour needed more money in the sense that Live weren't going to stop pumping in money, no matter if they lost it.
Yeah,
it was like an endless bucket of cash. That it was like, well, we've lost loads of money this year because we haven't got TV broadcasting rights, we haven't got, sponsorship deals and things like that. But it doesn't matter. We'll still keep paying $4 million the first, and we'll keep doing this. So then all of a sudden, the PGA Tour has to do these elevated events, which they've created, and then I think when they done that, created a problem for themselves.
Yes,
where it was like, okay, we need to get some more money from somewhere. And when that more money comes from the guys that own Live, all of a sudden it's acceptable. So
yeah, but I still just don't understand. you know, if the PGA Tour players didn't go to live anyway, like the ones that didn't, and then they did it on what was already set forward from them, right? And then they create these elevated events. To me, what I'm concerned about, right, and I'm very aware of the time, I don't want to talk about it the whole time, but what I'm concerned about, because this is a date, is for starters, there's nothing wrong with having 3 main tours. Leave each other alone.
No.
DP World Tour doesn't need to be with PGA Tour. Live Tour doesn't need to be with anyone. Just keep your own space. You know what I mean? If you want to create a World Golf Championship event, go for it. You know, like top 10 players from each one or something, but stay out of each other's thing, because now what's happened is the PGA Tour are like, we want more as well. More is not always better, because look what's happened to like the Euro Pro Tour. Have lost that. You know, we're going to keep losing these minor tours, mini tours around the world. And for the sake of, you know, trying to create this massive tour. So what's going to happen now potentially? It looks like, you know, these live players are going to play with the PGA Tour players. Now, the PGA Tour guys who got a card, you know, let's say from 100 to 125 are gone now.
Yeah, that's the problem, is it doesn't help.
No.
In my opinion, it doesn't help grow the game, which they always talk about doing, right? It'll grow it financially for the better players, which for them, like, good deal, crack on and do what you got to do. But what are they doing to kind of developmental tours, and what are they doing to get players in the game? They've, you know, the PGA Tour got that PGA Tour U, which has just been obviously released at is it Ludwig Hadberg? Is it whoever it was who won that?
Yes.
And you get a full PGA Tour card. Well, that still takes away from somebody, and don't get me wrong, he deserves it. He's gone and done what he's done.
Yes.
But it takes another card away from somebody that could have been out there grinding for years, and that's why I never blame your Pat Perez or people like that went to live, because they just hit the lottery. They got paid millions of dollars to go to live and not play much golf, but guarantee a financial stability for their families. And that's inevitably the question I would have asked myself if I was ever in those shoes. It would be, okay, what would my family, or what would be best? And then let's go with that.
And the scary thing as well, like, you know, what's happened when the PGA Tour came into the DP World Tour, and we've lost now the top 10. So if you qualify for the DP World Tour, you finish in the top 10, right? Then you get a PGA Tour card. So now what's happened is the DP World Tour each year are going to lose their top 10 players. Yeah. So how's that growing the game? It's definitely not. And then in America, right, the web.com guys and that, they've lost that opportunity for those 10 cards. Yeah. You know, the guys got grinding around in America on the mini tours and going to qualifying. I don't think there is anymore. They can't even. They've lost 10 spots.
No,
from the Europe coming.
It's only qualifying for Corn Ferry now, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can do, and then from there you can get your other cards. But I mean, it was funny you should say that with the rankings and stuff with the European Tour. So even still, or DP World Tour, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
The top 10 is basically made up of people that don't play on that tour anyway.
Because of majors.
Right? Yeah, because of majors and stuff. So then it would go to the next 10 best, which is where you would lose, like, 20 of your best aren't going to be playing every year. And then those 20 will be playing majors. So then it will go to the next 10, which will go down to like the top 30, basically, that you're then taking from the tour.
It's Burko. It's absolutely Burko. And it's not about the players. So what people listening to this here right now, it's not about the players.
No.
Think about, like, it's not about... What I mean by that, sorry, is it's not about the guys not getting to watch the best golf, because we know there's good golf everywhere, right? It's about those relationships are now lost from people following the DP World Tour. So, like, imagine if you went and just took the top 10 guys out of the PGA Tour, well, we just saw it, go to live. People tied their bloody knickers in a knot because, you know, Pat Perez and Bryson DeChambeau and these guys went across. Well, how do you think the guys in Europe are feeling, the people who like to watch that on TV? Now, they're losing their top 10. They haven't bat an eyelid because some other tour has taken their top 10 players. Because now they get to have the Shane Lowrys and the, you know, whoever's playing over there. So the PGA Tour has done a worse job than the Live.
Yeah, I think... I don't know which way. I'll be interested to see it, because I still think people keep saying Live's still going to be a thing, but I think that they will have Live events, but under a PGA Tour bracket, so that the PGA Tour kind of dictate when they are and what they look like, and whether it turns from 48 people to 72 and you have team events. But I still think that team event format will stay. I still think all of that stuff will stay.
I think as
So,
well, it essentially comes down to as well, right? So Jay Monahan, I think he's now, I can't remember what special words are, 2IC of that new committee or whatever, with the bridging of the two tours.
Yeah.
Or 3 tours, is that it comes down to how much that gentleman let his name starts with F, who was on all the media this morning. Starts with Farris, or whatever his name is, who looks after the live.
Yeah, the PIF guy, yeah.
Yeah, it comes down to him to, like, if he really wants to dig his heels in and keep this live going, or does he just go like, you know what, we got our goal. We're now, they've had goals, PIF, of being like owning football teams, owning all these sporting franchises, and now they've got the PGA Tour. They're like, okay, great. We don't actually need to have live anymore because we've got our hands on the PGA Tour.
I was looking at something the other day that it's Yazir Al Rumayyan, or however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
So I got this thing here. He's the governor of Saudi's 620 billion investment fund.
Oh, is that all?
He's yeah, just a little bit. Which kind of sums up the endless money pit, right?
Yes.
He's the chairman of Newcastle, which is obviously an English football team.
Yeah.
He's a board member at Uber and SoftBank. He's a right-hand man to the Crown Prince.
Yeah.
He's a chairman of the oil giant Aramco.
Yeah.
And now he's the chairman of PGA Live golf entity, or let's say golf worldwide, because that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Professional golf worldwide.
Yeah.
So this guy is like taking over.
Well, let's just say that he's not too worried when he goes to Subway. He has to pay an extra £1 for avocado, is he? He's doing all right.
Certainly isn't worrying about getting a foot long, that's for sure.
No, he's not. He's not checking his Netflix subscription to see if he's got too much subscriptions.
No, he's not worried at Chipotle about getting the. What did I have at Chipotle? Where's extra? It's not avocado. Can't think of it. Anyway,
what is your go-to takeaway?
That's. I don't like takeaways a lot in England, to be honest.
Okay.
I like Chinese.
But
if I'm in America, it's Chick-fil-A or Chipotle.
Is it?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me. All right, then. Let's get into golf. Right, let's get into golf.
Cool.
Tell me, I got a list of 5 topic areas here I want to talk to you about, which I haven't even told you about, but don't worry about it. Talk to me about statistics, right? And
yeah.
How do you use statistics? How do you use them as a coach, and how do you encourage your players to use them, from the recreational golfer through to the tour player?
So stats, and I'm very much a statistical based golf coach, and that's not saying that I rely solely on stats, but I use them definitely as a baseline to help me identify either weaknesses or strengths in their game. To best formulate a plan, or what everyone calls it, a blueprint to help them improve, right? Yeah. Now, a lot of people, I find, when they look at statistics, focus too much on the weaknesses. But in my opinion, with statistics, I base everything around what their strengths are. Yeah. Okay, how can we make sure that we maintain these strengths and keep them as a strength whilst getting the weaknesses slightly better at the same time?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I use it with online students, in-person students all the time, kind of using it as a baseline. I use Clipped. Clipped kind of gives you strokes gained as well as a shot quality rating. So I get to really dive deep into what every shot looks like and where they're missing it and what they're doing.
Okay.
But I'd like to have a lot more built into, me as a coach. I'm always looking at more and more and more in stats. And when I look at stats, I don't think you can necessarily build in, the environment that they're in, what stage in the tournament they're in, what their intention in the shot is. It makes it a lot more difficult to see how accurate the stats are then. Yes.
Well, this is why I use draw more circles, right, Alex? And I've got a few topic areas to talk about this, right, within the stats, obviously, topic area, is that we do a lot of data collection. I've only just started recently using it as a whole from all my students in practice. So, because you can create your own environment. So we
Yeah.
use 5-ball tests around a green. So, for instance, you might be a 5-yard chip shot from the thick rough. We measure the middle ball, and that's now your baseline. Because what you're talking about there, so what Alex is talking about there around about, looking at stats and how they sometimes just don't paint a true reflection of what's going on, especially at the elite as well, is that if you take a look at, for instance, Victor Hovland when he won last week, the 18th hole there on his ball nestled up against the first cut and in the fairway there.
Yeah.
And he's got a pin back left, right? A 72nd hole of a tournament. He finds it hard to hit his natural little draw shape in there, due to the nature of how that club was going to react through the two different types of turf height. So you can't use that as a statistic for quality of strike due to the nature of the environment and all that attached to it, right?
Exactly. And the environment is, in my opinion, is like the single biggest breakdown of how we can change and how your golf swing changes based on situational places or based on, what you're looking at in front of you from lie and things like that. It's not just about looking at data. It's about what's gone on before or after the data, and what's going on in that moment, as to how that data can change. But the key to looking at statistics is understanding what changes in the data during the environmental change, right? So if they're on the 72nd hole of a tournament and they're leading, or they're the 36th hole in a 4-day cut event, or if you're on the 16th hole of your monthly medal, if you're just playing as an amateur golfer, right?
Yeah.
How does your statistics change based on that new environment that you've just put yourself into? And that's something that I like to really dive into a lot. Is okay, you started off, you played really well, then you look at strategy and how your strategy involves it later on in the round.
Yeah.
And you start off by then going, okay, well, you started chipping it well there, but as soon as the pressure comes on, this shot comes back in and you start digging it and you start doing this and that. So that's why the shot quality went down, or that's why your strokes gained went down towards the end of the round.
Yes.
Because the environment changed it.
Yes.
And so it's us as coaches doing a better job of helping them understand why the data changes due to the environment and how we can best equip them to deal with it.
I agree. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And yeah, so when we're using the word environment there, that's a big banner. So Alex is talking about the mental situation of the place that you're in. So if you're having a really good round, or if you're pressured around, say, the water hazards or green types or whatever that you might have fear around, people watching you or leaderboards, or even like weather, and then even coming down to lie and situational stuff like that. So how we're reacting to certain types of environments, because no shot's the same. No shot's the same.
No, and I like to build it up. I like to call it the 3 S's of, yes, statistics is at the forefront and data, should we say, right?
Yes.
But then it's the strategy and the skills that they have at each different stage.
Yes.
And how the environment changes those 3 things. How does the environment change the statistics? How does the environment change your strategy? And how does the environment change the skill that you apply when you're in that situation?
Yes, and how you can also measure this, people, right? So, for instance, how you can also, like how I measure is we measure practice. So you measure your training. So if you're doing your measurements, say you always keep flubbing a chip under pressure, right? And you're hitting it heavy under pressure. Well, if you go to your practice and you do a 5-ball test, pick your medium ball, and if that keeps bettering what you're doing on the golf course, then you haven't got a skill issue, a technique issue that you need to see a particular coach about. You've actually got a performance issue. You know, so what we're saying there is, so you can actually measure, like, hang on, I do this well in practice. Well, if I test it under practice, then I've got a performance issue going on here, and I need to work through a process to try and stop, this happening under the pressure.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's like you say, developing skill.
Yeah,
Hey,
absolutely.
You told me as well there, right? Let me. You said something at the start of that which I thought was really good about focusing on people's strengths. Now, tell me, what I like about that is it helps build a golfer's framework. So what I mean by that is it helps build not just technique, but how when say, for instance, when Alex does something well, when Alex does X, Y, Z, he plays well. So my blueprint might look different to your blueprint, where you might only have to hit, let's just say, general statistic. When you hit 14 greens, you break par. You know, when I have to hit only 13 greens to break par because my putting is superior. You know, something like that. Is that what you like to use it for as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I had one of my guys in this morning, and we've gone through the same thing, in the sense that I've made a little bit of an error with one of my students, because we've been focusing so much during this off season on making his approach play better, in the sense of dialing in what he's doing with flight and dialing in what he's doing with distance control, which is two of the biggest imperatives with having good iron players, right?
Yes.
And so he's always been a superb driver at a golf ball. Yeah.
Yep.
But it's almost like it wasn't neglected, but there was so much focus that went into improving his iron play that towards the start of the season, a couple of months ago, the driving dipped a bit. And it was like, okay, hang on, we need to backtrack a bit and get this back to your strength. Because when you do this very well, you play really good golf, not regardless of how your iron play is, but it has less of an importance, which is why clipped is actually pretty good, because it gives you a rating on what's an importance to your scoring. So it kind of tells you, that's not telling you what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. It's telling you, okay, when you drive it well, you score well. When you wedge it well, putt it well, etc., you score well. And that matrix for him has always been very heavily weighted in, when you drive it well, you do play well. Yeah. So irrespective if you're trying to improve your iron play, you still need to drive it well, or you're not going to play well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And that's in your player's case. That's like your player's blueprint, because that's not the same for everyone. Like that's like everyone's got to build their own framework, because look at,
absolutely,
you know, like Tiger.
Those little pie charts, if you think about it as a 4-segment pie chart with putting, around the greens, iron play, and driving, right? Yeah. That pie chart looks different for everyone on what their importance is to their game. Like I had one guy the other day, it was like 65% importance in driving, which is very heavily weighted, that when he drives it well, he plays well. Yeah. And then I had a lesson straight after with a student, and his was 58% in putting.
Holy
shit. Like it's just gone from one end of the spectrum to the other. But that's just saying that everyone's strengths and weaknesses are different. But the importance on what's important to them for scoring is also the bigger importance.
Yeah. Yes. And you know what? I was going to talk about Rory, but I actually get a few messages when I give Rory a bit of a hard time on here. But like, look at Rory in the last few holes during the week, right? We all see how well he drives the ball. And he hit it 370, 340, 340, all in the fairway, 3 holes out of 4 holes or something. Mm-hmm. And can't get it to 20 feet, you know? And so, yeah, that's enough about that.
And this is the question that I would ask then, is I would say, okay, well, what's more of an importance to Rory when he plays well? Is he driving it really well, or is he wedging it really well? And I think I'd probably answer that his driving, when he is driving really, really well, he does probably play really well as a pie chart kind of look at his game. But some people would argue different and say when he wedges it well, he scores really well.
I would definitely argue that case. Definitely. I would definitely say it's his wedge. Yeah. His wedge.
And that's when, again, right, this would be the same Dustin, right? DJ for all those years would be awful with his wedges, worked his nuts off wedging it. And all he ever does on the range now is wedge it. Yeah. And you see now how much better he got developing over the years, from when he kind of entered the scene to, well, when he left the scene and went to live, shall we say. But
yeah, but he screwed his driver back to 310. Like, he doesn't want it to go any further than that. He just says, I just chip at 310, 320. That's all I want to do. He knows that he can be the world's best player if he hits at 320. Doesn't it go 370?
Years of his wedges.
Yeah, anyways, that's an interesting way that we can use statistics to help build their framework, and it helps create your DNA. You know, like I've got students of mine that, you know, like, say for instance, he will listen to this, his name's Gareth from up in Sydney, and he says, he always wants to break 80, right? He's single digit, top end, just got to single digits for the first time, online subscriber. And he knows that when he hits 9 greens, he breaks 80. And he says to me, Toby, shot 82. Oh, how many greens? 7, 8. And I go, and next day, what did you shoot? 78. How many greens? 11. I know. And I know that's a very broad way of looking at it because, greens and that aren't a great way. But for him, we know that if we can get the ball, keep it in play, get it up there, we can hit more greens and he can be a single digit golfer. It's not rocket science. Yeah. He knows that.
And it's very broad and it's very basic, like you said, that kind of metric there, right? But it's one that resonates really well with that player. And it's one that and that's where it comes into one of my main things, which is kind of human first and every player is different, etc. But, as long as you understand that one metric that's going to make them play, and it might be a few metrics, but that's going to essentially provide you the basis with how they play better golf.
Yeah.
Then essentially you're doing your job right, which is why I don't believe a lot in when people kind of, let's not say bash, but they go at other people online for saying that the information is poor. But if the idea behind the information is to make the player better,
yes,
right, then it's not the wrong information.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I think you would find it challenging to I think people shouldn't be offering an opinion if someone is sharing something that was information they gave to another player. Definitely. Yeah. I think if someone's standing in front of camera and says you have to do this, then you can give them a hard time. But if they're giving information that's shared to a player, because I even gave information to a player today online, and he wrote back to me immediately and said, "Won't that make me slice it?" I was talking to him about helping him exit left. And I said, "Don't worry about that, mate. You're 7 degrees into out. Your path is 7 degrees right. We have to make you feel like you're slicing it." But he was under the illusion that if I swing left, I'm going to slice it. He's got miles of room to go left, but that's something that I wouldn't, he felt that swinging left is going to create this. Well, not for you, buddy. Not for you.
No. And again, right, you're going to get him swinging from 7 right to feeling like he's swinging 7 left.
Yes.
Right. But when he's on the golf course, there is no chance he's going to go from 7 right to 7 left by going out and playing. No. That 7 right might be 4 right when he goes out into the environment and changes.
I know. Trust me, Alex, I can't hit a fade to save my life. I haven't hit a fade for 12 years on the golf course.
I see the left side of the golf course more times than anyone else in history.
I see toe hooks all day. All right. Anyways, my cousin-in-law, whatever you call it.
It gives me anxiety talking about low left.
Oh, left. I'm over it. I'm so over left. I've actually found something today in my own golf swing. I found something yesterday in my own golf swing to help me get the face more open. It's more about, I've actually gotten my right forearm more supinated earlier on in the backswing. So I used to be all about trying to pitch it up a little bit straighter. Yeah. Getting it more vertical. And then, so people listening to that is, if you think about what supination and pronation is, the easy way to remember this, right? If you hold your hand out in front of you and you're holding sup, right? Your right forearm is now supinated, right? And if you tip it down, then it's pronated, right? Now, I had my shaft pitched up really steep in the way back, and always felt that I needed to do that. And I always hit the ball a good distance. And now I've worked on getting that fanned open way more on the way back. And now I'm just hitting these beautiful little 10-yard draws and not 50-yard draws.
I found something like that the other day.
Yeah, what'd you find?
In the sense that I know my thoracic is relatively tight.
Yes.
Although I get quite a lot of rotation. If you've got kind of a tight thoracic, it means you're not going to be as vertical as some people, and you want to feel a lot more rounded in order to complete turn and get some depth, like rounded with the shoulders versus having a lot of tilt to them. We get them a lot more rounded. Yeah. And I felt exactly the same thing. So I felt exactly the same thing in terms of the supination of the right arm. I got the club a little bit more open. I felt like the swing was going way flatter. And all of a sudden I was hitting a fade and hitting like a 2-yard draw, but that's like fine for me. I can deal with that.
Hey, can I tell you why I think my opinion to that could be happening to you is, I say this a lot, we spend a lot of our time with a recreational golfer who slices the ball. So I spend a lot of my time kind of working on helping people close that face down in the backswing, and close. I'm not saying I like a particularly closed face, but helping generate a more closed face potentially in the backswing or the downswing. I'm not too big on where it has to happen. As long
Generally, if we get amateurs more closed with the club face, they will be a lot better. 100%.
Yeah, they'll stop slicing. Anyway, I spend a lot of time with right wrist and extension, which is kind of bending back and a little more than what is away from my.
You just sound like you're describing my swing.
Mate, I think we've got similar swings. You definitely got a little bit more curvature in your thoracic through your setup position, I see.
Yeah.
You're definitely a bit more rounded.
That's that reduced mobility through thoracic.
Yeah, that's probably because you spend a lot of time coaching like me and you're spending couched over all the time.
Yeah.
Hey, so tell me, all right, that's enough about our golf games. Talk to me about helping develop. So we spoke about framework there about a golf game, right? I want to hear about framework around technique and creating kind of the blueprint. So, have you got anything on that, or do you want me to lead?
I can kind of go away with it with like a golfer's DNA.
Yes.
Okay, is what I would call it.
Mm-hmm.
I think first we need to understand that everyone's different. You need to own your own pattern, while still wanting them to improve and become more efficient. And there's no substitute for. There are certainly some positions that we can move amateur golfers towards that will make them better, right? Yeah. But there's very minimal things that I would say are non-negotiables for me from bottom to top, from amateur golfer to professional golfer.
Interesting.
Because the only thing that I would say is a non-negotiable is that absolutely everybody is different, and their human anatomy is made up of something different that will require a different piece of the puzzle for me to be able to get them hitting functional golf shots, should we say, right? We need to understand that all players from top to bottom will have a tendency and have a variable that helps them generate force, right? So when I create a blueprint, for me, it's helping the student understand what the problem is, right? Understand what the solution is, and what drills can I give you to work you away from the tendency, and what then to look for in the ball flight, right? Equipping a student with that, I think, is the most important thing that a golf coach can do.
Yes.
When you hit it good, what does the ball do? When you hit it bad, what does the ball do? When you see the ball doing this, what are you doing in your golf swing to produce it? When you see the ball doing that, what are you seeing in your golf swing for the ball to do what it's doing, right? And if you arm them with that kind of blueprint, they'll be fully equipped with what they might have to look for on camera, with what they look for on the golf course, and how we begin to then, from that statistic, then we can move them into more detailed parameters such as measured practice and stats analysis and short game and putting and all those type of blueprints. But essentially it's problem, solution, drill, ball flight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything obviously, ball flight comes at the front of everything, and we've reverse engineered ball flight, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like ball flight first.
Yep.
What's the problem with the ball flight and the impact parameters that we're doing? Yep. What's the solution? What's the drill? And what would the ball flight look like at the end?
Yes.
That's kind of how I build a player's blueprint.
Yes. And that to me is people have heard me. You're pretty much, it's exactly what I say every time, right? We work backwards. You even started there at ball flight. We even start at score stats ball flight. Score stats. What's interrupting those statistics and score first? Even is it even ball flight? But when we're talking about particularly technique framework there, right? And to me as well, Alex, I think people, if you have a certain flight, right? Say you fade the ball 10 yards, right? And you're a fader of the golf ball, you fade it 10 yards. And that's going to have a club face that's slightly open and a swing direction, we'll just call it swing into the left-hand side a little bit, right? So across the golf ball. Now, what you need to understand, right, is that work out how you can play with that first A, and what those misses are, and you're most likely going to be a little long left and short right. It's probably your two types of misses that you're going to have. Look at how you can, if you're looking to lessen that slice, how you can do it easier and if it's actually beneficial to do it. You know, like if it's actually a good idea to start changing the shape of your golf ball, or should you kind of just learn how to play with that and develop your skills? Because I completely, when people say to me, Toby, I'm a slasher with a golf ball, I want to learn to draw it. I go, oh God, can we just start with straight first? You know, I truly think that's quite important first. Like, let's try and start with straight and see how that goes, because it's very, very challenging to do all that. If you can hit your 10-yard fade and get contact good, if you can contact it nicely, strike, you know, the grass isn't always greener.
That then just kind of goes back to what your intention is before your golf shot as well, right? What are you trying to do with the golf ball, and how can we best equip you with the right variables to get you to hit this golf shot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if a player wants to come in and they say they want to hit a draw, or they want to hit a fade, I'll almost show them all the things that are making the golf ball go left. So that in the golf swing, there's variables that make it go left, right, up and down, which is divot depth, and forward and back, which is low point control, right? So what things are you doing in your golf swing that are left variables? What things are right variables? What things are up variables, down variables, forward, backwards?
Yeah.
And how can we combine those to create the optimal impact for them to produce the ball flight they want to hit, right?
Yeah.
But going back to, like you said, with the repeatable pattern, where you see players that are hitting fades that's 10 yards, but they repeat it every time, all I need them to do is control start line, because then it's fine. You know, if generally, if a player can repeat their swing and control their ball flight and the curvature on that ball flight, at that point, regardless and irrespective of aesthetics and how the golf swing looks, it's functional.
Yeah.
And functionality over aesthetics every day of the week.
Yes. And that's what you know, I'm in a few group chats as well, and we always talk about what's the ball doing, you know, and you know, many lessons that Alex and I get, we get golf swings that come to us, and people just send us golf swings without giving us any information. And I say to people, that's just like walking in the doctor's office and just not saying anything.
Yeah.
Just standing there.
100%. And we are doctors, right? That's what we do.
Yeah.
We get given a case. We give them the medicine to fix the case, and then
yes,
hopefully they come better out the other side. And like you're saying, you don't go into the doctors and just go, hi, what's going on?
Yeah.
That's it. You know, and you have this thing as well with golfers that when they come on, especially online, because we can't physically see the ball flight, we can guess what's going on by looking at their pattern for sure.
Yeah.
But they come in and they say, I'm struggling to shallow the shaft. I can't get it external. I can't rotate, and I can't do this. And you're okay. Well, what's going on with the ball? Like
every day.
Where's the ball going? Is it going left? Is it going right? Are you fatting it? Are you thinging it? Are you hitting it off the toe? Are you hitting it off the heel? Like, give me some. That the only things I really want to know when you send me a lesson are strike, toe or heel, middle, divot depth, thin or deep. Okay, ball flight, starting left or right, curving left or right. Fine.
Don't tell me what you think about your golf swing. Don't tell me if I can.
Just tell me
shoulders going internal too early.
Just tell me about the ball flight. Just tell me about what you see in your own ball flight, and then we can best prescribe the medicine to fix your ball flight if there is a problem with it.
Yeah, that's why I also love like TrackMan reports and stuff like that, and you know, Foresight Sports, I should say, reports and all that stuff. I love all that stuff that just comes through because we can see patterns. Okay, so tell me, you actually said something there, right, where you don't have any non-negotiables, but you surely have parameters and preferences. I've seen
every coach has parameters and preferences, right?
Yes.
But I think the way that I was trying to say that quote was the amount of times that I build those parameters and preferences into students is not a hell of a lot.
Okay.
Right? Because the only thing I want them to understand is how they can be better as moving better. If we move better as humans, we will be better golfers, right? The amount of times I see people that are sat at the desk all day long that come in and they're set up and they're used to having their hand on a mouse, their right hand's on a mouse, So then their spine sits a little bit reverse tilted towards the target. Their right arm sits on top at setup.
Interesting.
Right. The amount of times you see, because their human day-to-day activity is based around how they then stand in the golf swing and how they address the golf ball, you need to unwind the 30 years that they've been sat at a desk with their hand on a mouse.
Yeah.
I had a real funny one the other day. I've got a good buddy of mine that is really into kind of human anatomy and getting people standing better and things like that, right?
Somewhere.
And we had a guy, he come down and was shadowing me, but helping me out with some movement stuff for my guys. He's kind of a 3D biomechanics guy, a guy called Rich Glenn. You should all kind of reach out to him if you haven't yet. And we basically had a guy in that was in the Navy, right? And it's, why do you... not only you're standing like that, okay, why are you standing like that? There's a reason why you're addressing the golf ball like that. There's a reason going on behind it. And he had this tendency in the backswing of really retracting his right arm behind him.
Yes.
Okay. And, okay, what do you do? I'm in the Navy, blah, blah, blah. And he come up with this superb question. He goes, okay, how often do you salute? And he goes, well, I'm there saluting every day. Right? So he's like this. He lives like this all day long.
Stop it.
All day long, right? So we go, okay, well, what do you feel like if you have to salute the thumb, or what was it? We have to salute your palm to the sky. All of a sudden he does this. And he starts folding this right arm beautifully well in backswing.
Yes.
And he goes, it just feels complete opposite to where I live.
Wow. So what Alex is saying is people are saluting. So just even think of what that elbow's doing. I kind of relate it to like starting a lawnmower.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like that way there.
Absolutely.
Well, that is, you're not going to get that one every day, but that is good. That's very good. I can't believe that little saluting. Gosh.
The one that you see the most, 100%, is the one where people are sat at a desk all day with their hand on a mouse. Their right arm sits too much internally on top. Their right shoulder sits on top. The spine tilts towards the target, and they live here.
Yeah.
And they're wondering that, when you turn them into an appropriate setup, they're like, my right arm feels way under. And it's like, no, you're just literally stood upright.
Yeah.
You're just learning to stand correctly. And when you learn to stand correctly and then address the golf ball, you'll straight away move better. When you move better, you'll increase speed.
Yep.
And everyone always goes on about they want to hit it further. Well, you'll hit further if you move better. And you hit the middle of the face.
Hey, but what you're saying there, right, technique-wise, and it's one of my major measurement points. So when Alex is talking about, at the desk, and he keeps talking about the spine tilting towards the target, what he's also saying there is like the buttons on the shirt or the sternum are in front of the center of the pelvis. So say your buttons are in front of the belt buckle. I find if you are there in the setup position, you're in a really, really difficult place because your lead side, your left side's too low for the right-handed golfer, and when your sternum's there, you're going to see the pelvis slide out underneath you. You're going to tilt, swipe across it, or back up. It's really difficult. So what Alex is saying there, right, is that if you now take your setup position and you look down, if you can get your buttons to be just a little bit more behind the center of the pelvis, what we see a lot, because he's talking there about that right arm coming too far over. So if you push your right arm over, it's going to tilt you the wrong way. And then that can help you get that right arm to fold properly and, as we say, kind of hinge that right arm properly, right? That right elbow joint.
Yeah,
not
fix a player's pivot.
Yeah.
And this comes back to performing the adequate due diligence on a player and who you've got in front of you. And it's not just the due diligence, it's the objective due diligence, okay? And what I mean by the difference in that is doing your due diligence on a player and what they done when they played well, what they do in day-to-day basis, injuries, all those type of things is due diligence, right? But objective due diligence is a player sending you a swing from 5 years ago, right? But not understanding that they've undergone 3 surgeries and hit 20,000 balls since. Yeah. Right? You might have played really well from this position, but the ability for you as a human to get back to this position now is very, very difficult because of how your body is made up.
Yeah.
Right? And how your individuality as a human being is now completely different to what it was 5 or 6 years ago. So it's good to have these things and these ideas of where they were at when they did play really, really well.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
However, we need to be able to pick the bones of that and figure out, okay, you've hit 20,000 balls since, so there's going to be repeated stress on the joints. There's going to be stress on certain muscle areas that wasn't there 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You might have had a surgery. You might have had a different, all of these things that factor into why a student might be doing what they're doing. It's not just about the data. It's about movement, what you're eating, what you're doing at home life, how you're sleeping. It's the personal approach of a player. The amount of time that I get a student that will turn up and you can tell they've just had the worst day at work. And it doesn't matter what you say to them then as a golf coach, just like, let's go in and have a coffee. Yeah. Like, don't worry about the lesson today. Like, we just need to go in and have a chat and just chill out. And just, if you're coming in with the frame of mind that you've had an awful day at work, your body's going to be awful, your sleep pattern's not going to be great, you've probably eaten horrifically, so there's inflated parts of your body that you wouldn't need inflated. Like, the amount that you can go into what goes into a golf swing is huge before you even think about getting flipping shallow or anything. You're trying to do the latest flexing the lead wrist and all this other crap.
Mate, what's wrong with radial hinging of the wrist, for fuck's sake? Why do I have to have my lead wrist in flexion? Like, why does everyone want that? Oh gosh, everyone keeps.
There's a lot of things that go into getting a player better at golf, not just how your golf swing looks and getting flexion in the lead wrist.
Oh, getting Gucci. I tell you one thing though I can say, right, Alex, and I can relate to this as a player, is when I was playing, and I wanted to be a player, right? I had aspirations to be a player.
Yeah.
Even though I'm 2'8" and pump at 240, I always played my best when things were well outside. What I mean by that is that my relationship, I was always struggling for money. When I was a trainee, I was making $230 a week. My rent was like 180. Like, I had no money. And whenever I had a little bit of money behind me, whenever I had a bit of clarity, I felt comfortable, I wasn't hungover, I always played my best golf. And if I went to a tournament, my back was against the wall and I needed to play really well, it only ever happened once. I needed money to get petrol to get home. That's how tight it was. And it only ever really happened once. And you'll see stuff like we see stuff on tour as well. And I see it in the recreational golfer just as much when they're going through, a marriage breakup or, loss of a loved one or physical. We definitely see it. But one of the things I will say there, right, to kind of get away from that and get a little bit more technical is I will say that people lose their understanding of what they're supposed to look like at setup.
Yeah.
That to me
is the big one. You would have seen me post on Instagram a hell of a lot that hashtag setup matters and get it trending, because
do you?
The amount of times that if we set up better, we'll hit the desired golf shot and pivot better and move more free.
Yeah.
Just by setting up completely different to what you're used to.
Yeah.
Is monumental, like huge, and that to me is the least invasive approach that I can usually make to a student.
Yeah. And
right. And it's something that will give me the biggest bang for the buck, shall we say, that I like to talk about.
Yes. But what you're also saying there, right, is we always bark on about this, Alex Moore, Grant Field, yourself, Alex Clapp, we're talking about how important setup is and how much it can adjust your flight. But what you got to remember as well is that don't fucking lose sight of what your setup is supposed to look like. Because if we see how much it can dictate ball flight, and in my case, if I just tilt my neck a little bit to the left, I start potentially looking at maybe not hitting a 10-yard hook, then you can see how much it influences it. You need to understand what your pattern looks like. So I use those T-claw kind of strings on the ground to help alignment stuff, ball position stuff, because quite often you can just... I had a guy come to me the other day in person, nearly in tears, right? He was a 7 handicap golfer and he shot in the 90s, probably listening to this. He's shot in the 90s like 5 times in a row. He's getting all this advice, left, right, and center, this, that, right? I looked at his setup and I thought, there's no fucking way this ball can't go left. It can only go left. It can only go left. Like, this guy was set up. I was like, I changed him, made a few little adjustments. We went from 8 left path to 2 into out, right? 2 to the right. And his 7 handicap tendencies came out and it was just flush city. And I sat there for the next 50 minutes watching him flush it.
Yeah.
And just taking photos of his setup and just telling him, don't lose sight of this. And I promise you, people listening to this, I promise you that's what I did. And he told me for 5 minutes to start a lesson, the amount of crap he was trying.
Yeah.
I let him go, let him get it off his chest, and then just went, how about you just do this with your setup? Don't you reckon?
Yeah. Absolutely, mate. And again, what you've just described there is something that I like to do at every lesson. Is a lot of golf instruction, people like to say, oh, this is going to take a little bit of time to get this right, and you're going to take a lot of balls to get this right. But a golfer should never leave a lesson worse.
I agree.
Right? And what does the simplest way to get them better look like?
Yeah.
Yeah. Under the basis that this is a long-term plan.
Yeah.
Right? But then I know that they're going to leave this lesson. They might still hit a couple of the same shitty shots that they hit when they turned up, right?
Yeah.
But I know they're going to hit 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 golf shots when they go out in their next round. Yeah. And they're going to be completely flush. And it's going to be like, okay, I can see it now. I can see why I'm getting better.
Yeah.
And if you hit those 1 or 2 good golf shots and you transfer 2% what you've done on the driving range to the golf course, you're doing a hell of a job.
Yeah.
Right? You're doing a hell of a job. And the timing of what that change looks like is also vital. Sometimes some things don't need addressing right away. If you're over the top, you're producing the same ball flight every time, we don't need to worry about that. Mm-hmm. Or if the hand path is moving over the top, because generalizing the term over the top, I think, is flawed. So that's my fault then.
Yes.
What is coming over the top? Yeah. But what needs addressing? Some things don't need addressing right away. And if a player asks a question, but that can of worms doesn't need opening, then we'll just say, okay, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but we'll save that for later because that's not going to be important right now. Let's focus on the setup so that you can go out and play like you with your man. You can go out and play, and he's hitting these 7 handicap tendencies, and all of a sudden his brain's completely decluttered, and he hits these amazing golf shots.
Yeah, and even resonate exactly what you're saying, and not taking on too much as well as what you're kind of saying there as well at the one time. So get some stuff. What Alex saying there, get some stuff done with your coach or coaches listening to this. Get some stuff done that the player can implement immediately without being too shit, and then tell them to come back, and then we can start implementing a little bit more. More strategies in there once they get that nailed. Because a lot of the time as well, people come to you with, there's a fair bit of mental pain as well at the same time. So some people, you got to look at, for coaches listening to this, right, you got to look at the strategies like this. Are you a 10 handicap golfer? Are you dealing with a 10 handicap golfer who's playing to a 10 and wants to get to a 5? Or are you dealing with a 10 handicap golfer who's playing like a 20 and wants to get back to a 10? So you've got to look at that as well, because there's a lot of scarring around that. So especially if they've been playing like a 20 handicap for a long time, we've got to just draw them back as easy as we can to 10. And then, if they want to get tricky and get a bit Gucci.
There's always trauma.
Yeah.
And I always, like, the amount of lessons that I'm not firefighting something is very little.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're always, somebody's coming in because they got a problem, but the best lessons that I've ever had are when the player comes in and they come in and they go, to be honest with you, I'm flushing it right now. And you're like, brilliant. Let's get this on camera. Let's get the data wrote down.
Yeah.
Let's understand how you're moving, why it's producing what it's producing. And we'll go and have a cup of coffee, or we'll go and have a cup of tea, or I'll give you some skills tests to see what it's performing like in a skilled environment, right? Or in a pressured environment.
Yeah.
And they're the best lessons.
Yeah. A lot of the time they say they're flushing it and you're like, yeah, let's have a look. Let's test it. You're like, really? Okay.
And then but they're flushing it when they're just raking and hitting a golf ball.
Yeah.
And then you say, okay, let's put a bit of pressure on it. I want you to hit 10 drives inside a 25-yard radius. And then once you've done that, you've got to go and hole a 6-footer on the putting green. If you miss it, you've got to start again.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the pressure heightens massively. Then the flaws come out in the technique. And then you're like, okay, well, this is what we need to work out here, because this is the thing that's not holding up under pressure.
100%. Oh, mate, I agree. Hey, tell me about, tell me some preferences that you got. I would say from the outside looking in, right, like, honestly, Alex, I don't do a whole lot of scrolling anymore on the gram. time, and
Yeah.
I'm over it. But tell me, when I see you, right, would I be right in saying that rotation is something I hear a lot you say? Rotation.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Rotational and delivery freedom, let's say.
Delivery freedom. That sounds like something from my Uber driver.
There you go.
Tell me, what does that mean? Tell me about a preference of yours. We've all got preferences, and I always see you. I see you making these big rotations.
Yeah. If I'm talking about a preference, and like I said, preferences are completely subjective.
Yes.
But I think, more rotation. Certainly, if we work amateurs more towards more hand path depth in the backswing, a little bit more of a closed club face, like we spoke about, just to help with that rotation. Again, but then that completely depends on a player's speed, what they can deliver impact, and what loft they can deliver to generate the optimum ball flight and carry conditions. Inevitably, what I like to see as, a lot of people won't actually necessarily like to see in a golf swing is a lot of rotation, a lot of depth, which sometimes might mean the lead wrist might move through an extended position.
Yes, like
for some of the backswing.
Yes. So just to recap there, sorry, Alex, people listening to this, is that when Alex is saying hand depth, an easy way to measure this, right, guys, is from down the line. So when the camera is directly behind you, looking down the target line, he's talking about the hands there being how far they are behind the body. So if you draw a straight line from the butt of the club, hand depth is measuring there. You're probably saying about the right ankle, right heel, are you saying?
Yeah.
So
it's kind of right ankle to right toe, or heel, trail toe relationship. Where is your hands at the top of the backswing in relation to that point?
And this causes what he said there, extension. People would know that as your top hand on the grip, right? So if you're righty, that's your lefty, will be in a cuppy position.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Which for a lot of golfers would not be brilliant, because you'd want to move them a little bit more towards a stronger face.
Yeah.
If we're talking about a number one preference of mine, then I don't really change grip.
Really?
Yeah, that's one of the things I steer away from changing, unless it's going to be just you cannot produce a ball flight without this grip.
Yeah.
I believe there's plenty of other variables that we can pair, which would make them a better golfer if they kept the same grip.
Yeah.
Okay. I like to see more of a steep to shallow motion. Steep meaning the club's going vertically, moving back.
Yep.
And then the center of mass falls behind in the downswing and shallows out a little bit. I believe if we do that for amateur golfers, they'll be better. They'll be able to produce better ball flights.
Yes, but tell me, that's a good one, right? You're talking about the pitching of the shaft there, right? But you've got to be very careful on the way down, guys. People who are trying to get shallow, right? That's a hot topic online, has been for years. You got to do it the right way, right?
Yeah, 100%.
What's a negative way to shallow the club?
For me?
Or anyone when you're coaching?
Negative way to shallow it is by doing it all artificially.
Yes.
I guess.
So like the left shoulder. So for the right-handed golfer, people who get obsessed with the shaft looking a little bit more laid down or shallower, liking it looking shallow, don't just tip your left shoulder back up to try and get that shaft to change. Take a look at your head position when you're trying to shallow the shaft. Don't try and do it with your left shoulder coming up really high and backing up. You think so?
Yeah, completely. And then you can almost look at, when we're talking about this steep to shallow motion, it's important when we look to get it vertical, if it allows the player to then shallow the club during transition as they rotate without trying to apply any negative kind of forces to make that club get a little bit steeper.
Yeah.
Some golfers, then the problem with, as you see, then the inside takeaway that people always go on about, and I talk about as well, for a lot of players that's not a problem. But when, for me, with an amateur golfer, they roll it under and inside, and that club goes back really flat, and the lead arm's too much across the chest by kind of lead arm parallel during the backswing, that's when the problems occur in terms of they've gone shallow to steep.
Yes.
Right? versus just keeping the club a little bit more in front, which will involve a takeaway change
Yeah.
in order to get the club more up, so that as you apply force and rotate on the way down, that club will want to fall behind you and you can deliver patterns that are appropriate for the ball flight you want to hit.
Yeah.
But again, the amount of times that these preferences come out during lessons is now minimal. I was very, very preference based a few years ago.
Yeah.
We're going back more than a few years ago now, but I am very much under the preference now that it's just human first, and we need to decide what's most appropriate to get them hitting good golf shots, and that could look and does look different for every golfer.
100% it does. 100% it does. But, you know, when we're saying parameters and stuff like that before, like there's certain things, you know, we're talking about the setup stuff and things like this. And,
Yeah.
you know, we can't have, in my experience, I don't like to have the sternum leading the pelvis into the golf ball, you know.
Yeah.
I can't get the handle back up and out. So there's certain things that we need to kind of skew away from, and also looking at what people's goals are and aspirations. So if you're a 20 handicap golfer and you just want to get to a 12, you don't need to do potentially X, Y, Z. You can probably get there from an easier way. But for me,
I think
in my experience with grip though, Alex, I find that grip is a lot easier to adjust than what people actually think. And
yeah,
I find that people react really well to it. Like when I teach people a good grip, I'm a bit of a grip Nazi, but when I get people hinging their wrists in a radial fashion, we're looking after the conditions of the club face. So that means just kind of thumbs moving up, thumbs moving down. Obviously, it's a little bit of extension of the tri wrist and all that goes on. But I find that when I do that and get it out of people's palms, if I get a palmy grip and I change them, I'll get immediate effects straight away, I find.
Yeah, and like I said, that this is, again, no wrong or right way of doing something with any student. And there has been definitely times where I have changed somebody's grip, right?
Yeah.
But it's not one of the first things I look at to change.
No.
Because I continually am challenging my work and other theories and other work that I see.
Yeah.
Right. And trying to poke holes in those theories.
Yes.
Why does having this grip make it easier to do X, Y, and Z?
Yes.
Why does having this type of grip, or why does having this type of movement with your body, why does having this much depth with the lead hand at the top influence them to hit better golf shots?
Yeah.
Right? And so then I think the most important thing and the most difficult thing for us as coaches is, once we've got a player into a pattern, is keeping them on task.
Oh.
Right? Getting them to not search for holes that aren't actually there.
It's the hardest job as any coach, is keeping someone on task.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never told anyone that they've done something too much. I think that's the biggest thing when you say on task as well. It's what Alex is saying there as well. And I also think another way to kind of say when he means on task is people move on too quickly. You know, like it's oh, I'm hitting it really well. What's next? Oh, let's just keep hitting it well. You know, let's just see where this can take us. And if you're continuing to get better each time, and let it become a part of the subconscious, you know, because I see too much regression. You know, people start moving towards something else and moving towards this. And then, you know, today I had a guy, Anthony from the States, well, maybe yesterday it came through, and he, the week before, shot 76, his lowest ever round. He'll be listening to this, actually. 76 or 78, Anthony, you let me know. And then he sends me the next time. He's like, oh, I'm missing a little bit to the right. Now I've got the blocks back. I take a look, and all of a sudden, the framework of what we were working on before, which is we want to see the trail side of his pelvis rotate and not slide as much, he lost it. The right hip was hanging over the right foot, and he was hanging back. All of a sudden, you know, his ball line was half a foot in front of where it was, and he's missing it to the right. We'll fix that back up because you've moved on too quickly. You know,
yeah, exactly. And I think when I talk about preferences, I think my preference is, what does the student require in front of me?
Yes.
What will Toby do if he was in this situation?
Yeah.
What would George Gangs do? What would X, Y, and Z do? What would everyone do with this player in front of me?
Yeah.
And how can I give them the best ingredient to make them play better golf? Right? that's my preference. And if, like you said, if I was talking preference, rotational freedom, being able to deliver the club with freedom and ease, not having to try to do too much at the golf ball to compensate.
Yeah.
That would be where I would live, but absolutely human first for me is my biggest preference.
Tell me about I see you do some work with Mr. Humor. You do some extra study, do you, with Mr. Humor?
Yeah.
What have would you say that this has had an influence on you to a degree as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, the program that Hugh does, which is a CMAS program, continually does what I spoke about just now and just challenges what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And gets you to understand if what you're teaching is appropriate for the person you have in front of you.
Yeah.
I think for me, the program that Hugh does, if you want to develop as a coach, is imperative, but you need to be able to do the research and back it up. Yeah. You know, there's no point in just going there if you haven't got any ideas, thoughts, or preferences in the first place. It's understanding how can I change and grow as a human being. And what Hugh has helped me understand and do is just continually challenge myself and what I'm doing with a student. And, you know, I have these times where I drive home from the golf course and all I'm doing in my head is going through every lesson that I taught that day.
Same.
And I'm thinking, okay, did I do that right? What can I do better? And 9 times out of 10, I've got 15, 20 minutes worth of clips from every lesson that I've done that day. And I'll go back and watch them. And I'll go back and say, that was a load of shit that I was talking about there. What am I doing? And then I'll go back and go, fucking hey, that bit that I done there, excuse my language, was so good.
No, you can swear. I can swear a lot on there.
That was really good, you know?
I tell you what, Alex, it's funny you say that, right? Because I do the same thing, right? And I kind of rate how it goes in my head. And my wife will come home and I'll go, darling, I had every single person fucking flushing it today. That was the best day I've ever had. And then I'll come home from another day and I'll go, oh, I had a couple of strugglers today, a couple of struggle ones. You know, where I'm not afraid to shift gears by all means. You know, like if something's not working, I'm not going to just pound balls and say, oh, it's going to work if you work hard. I'm like, nah, I'm not settling for that. We're shifting gears. And I'll push lessons back if I can't get someone fixed in time. And sometimes I'll always feel quite comfortable leaving the person. I won't leave a person too uncomfortable. But I'll often get it like the last time and I go, fuck, why didn't I start there? You know, why didn't I start there? And the reason why I didn't start there in that place is because I didn't do my due diligence at the start of the lesson.
Yeah. And again, that's something that if you do that before the start of the lesson, you 9 times out of 10 can give a good lesson where the golfer leaves and he's better.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I'll often say, I've shared this one on here a few times where I had this guy and I was just so in the zone, and I think it might have been going through a period or whatever. I don't know. I was just in the zone. I was just grinding, and I said to him, I'm trying to shift his, you know, he's got the big hooks, and I'm trying to shift it left, and his path left, and I'm talking about numbers and not talking about what I wanted the club to do. And I said at the very end of the lesson, well, hopefully I can get you to fade the ball a little bit. And he goes, you want me to fade the ball? This is about 5 years ago now. I said, yeah, show me what a fade looks like. Boom, straight out, fixed it. I went, oh my God, Toby, I just spent like an hour and a half and then I just asked you to fade it. So now if someone is very hook biased, and I encourage you to try this, people listening to this, if you've got to say a big draw or a big slice, try and hook it or try and fade it. See what you can do. See how you can do it. And if you can all of a sudden start to see a different shape, just see if you can build that efficiently and go from there. Like, don't be afraid to test it. Put the ball here, put the ball there, hook it, slice
100%.
it.
This goes back to the left variables and the right variables, right? The hookers have just got too many left variables, right?
Yep.
And the slicers have just got too many right variables. So how can I give the hookers some of the slice stuff, and how can I give the slicers some of the hooker stuff, and we'll be on to a winner.
That sounds like something we shouldn't be talking about. But when you're talking there about when people listening to this, right? What Alex is saying there is when someone let's say slices a golf ball, there's a lot of things within their golf swing that they're doing that's creating that slice. Like we see patterns, right? We see things that are happening with arms, club face, you know, body. We're seeing a strong pattern each time. Now, it's Alex and I's objective to try and find that trigger that's going to help shift all of that behavior.
Yeah.
So we've got 1,226 different ways we can do it. And it's our goal to get that done first. So we see things, and when you were talking about the guy who was saluting, and bringing his arm up and dragging that right arm up, just by simply moving that right arm, it changes everything within the golf swing. Everything about that one right arm move triggered a massive flow on effects. So if you're watching something online and you're trying to move X because you see that, someone's doing this online, like getting shallow, for instance, you might have so much shit going against you that you can't get that done. It's like, well, of course you can't do that because you're holding it this way, or of course you can't do that because you're tilted this way,
Yeah, and understanding that when that right arm moves like that, and understanding what that domino does for the player is what makes good coaching.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So if the right arm sits too much on top at setup, it then retracts behind you and can't fold efficiently.
Yeah.
When it retracts behind you and can't fold efficiently, on the way down, you're going to throw that arm back at the golf ball. And when you throw that arm back at the golf ball, because the club face will likely be open, is you'll twist that handle when you get to the ball. Right? When you do that, you're throwing divot depth down, all of that stuff that it's changing. Whereas then you get them, okay, just set that right elbow better at address.
Yeah.
Okay, and get you standing appropriately. All of a sudden it folds better.
Yeah.
As long as they understand what the next movement will entail, where, okay, I don't feel like I need to throw it in the ground anymore. I don't feel like I need to stand up and stall. I can just turn and rotate.
Yeah, so what Alex is demonstrating to me there, right, is when guys listening to this about the analogy he used before with the mouse, right, at the desk. So when you got that right arm, let's just say that forearm is pronated a bit, so the right elbow is looking out. So when you're holding the golf club, the right elbow is potentially looking behind you. And when Alex says about setting that right arm, he's talking about what I would use is show the nurse your veins, or your elbow crease on your elbow, looking out towards, if Alex was standing in front of you where the camera is, like on the.
Imagine you're giving blood.
Giving blood. Yes. I was thinking about something else there.
And you're giving blood with that right elbow. But the key to it is the palm doesn't stay facing to the sky. You then just basically turn that right wrist over then to just grip the club.
Yes.
So it's more so the top of the arm down just below or on the elbow joint sits.
Yes.
Way better underneath.
It's nearly a hammer curl.
100%.
Yeah, so if you're holding a hammer
100%.
curl, so you're holding it up like that way there. And that's where, I like to see, one of my preferences is like a neutral grip, like as neutrals. Like I don't change people for the sake of it, but if you see that, you see that alignment there, whole way through wrist, elbow up to there, and it's just kind of working up and down. It's hard to miss it.
Absolutely.
Get your tilts right. It's difficult to miss it.
Mate, if they understand how to tilt from there, it's hard to deliver a non-functional impact.
It's tough.
I think everyone at the best level, highest level, turns, tilts, and extends.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So how can we best equip them to do that?
Yes. No, I agree.
Simple.
I agree. Hey, mate, this has been fun.
Man, I've enjoyed it. I could chat this shit.
I know.
For another 2 hours if we needed to.
Mate, you're telling me.
But you need to get. What time is it there?
Not late, but the footy's on, to be honest with you. But
how is it?
It's 8:45 here. 9:15 p.m. But I'm always doing it either with a cup of coffee early in the morning, or I'm doing it with a nice cup of tea at night. Nice cup of chamomile. Tell me, what's the rest of the year look like? What do you got planned? Anything planned?
I'm going to do maybe 1 or 2 coaching trips abroad. I'm maybe going to do a couple coach camps and student camps as well in the UK.
Yeah.
Other than that, just keep doing what I'm doing, mate. Nothing different other than keep coaching, keep doing it, keep learning, keep growing, and hopefully come out the other side.
Have you got any players playing on DP at the minute?
No, I've got one guy that was DP who's injured at the moment. Ben Stowe, a guy called Ben Stowe.
Yeah.
He's injured. I've got a couple guys that play kind of mini tour and challenge tour and things like that.
Yeah.
That are well into their season now.
Yeah.
But not any that I need to travel just yet. Is it something that I would love to do? I think I would really like to teach on tour, but it's not all what it's cracked up to be. I'd like to have a little crack at it, but then that'll be short-lived. Not short-lived because I'd like to do it. and I'm sure that I would love it, but not overly a key focus that I want to get on tour and be a tour coach. I just want to keep coaching golfers and getting them better.
Exactly. As Grant said last week, or on the podcast, was about just want to coach the next person in front of him.
100, but that Grant couldn't have said it any better.
Yeah, he just wants to coach someone. The next person in front of him wants to get better. Because I asked him why doesn't he chase around the tour? Because obviously he's got he's had lots of tour players and doesn't tickle his fancy either. And he just always said his main goal is to fix the next person standing in front of him. Now,
and if the next person that comes in front of me is a tour player and I fix them, then great.
Yeah.
But if the next player is a 20 handicapper and I get them down to single digits, then that essentially, I feel, is potentially better coaching.
Oh, it's tougher. It's like having a lunch break when you get a tour coach, I believe. But tour player, sorry. Tell me about, so the reason why Alex and I are sharing this type of stuff around, being a tour coach is tough is we got friends who are tour coaches, right? And chasing your players around the world, it's got its, you're away from family. You're also not secure to your job. You can get sacked the next day. You're also stressing, a lot of the time, not everyone's coaching Rory or,
you're working for their living.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of the time as well, like they're not.
Comes with that.
Like I say this a lot on here. Mr. Brett Drew, a friend of mine who played in the PGA Tour, like he finished a whole season only made $250,000, on the tour, like these guys aren't making, not all of them are making bank, and it is a stressful time. And, and
if you think a golf coach at best gets 5% at best,
at best, they get a retainer usually, but
retainer plus maybe 2-3%, but at the higher level.
And if you're an up and coming coach, right, you generally are getting the up and coming players. So, you're not getting, Alex Clapp's not having Victor Hovland slide in the DMs or something like that, or like, I shouldn't say that against you, but we're not getting the
100%.
The Rory saying that it's a tour player who's lost his.
Honest, the only way you'll get those players is if you take a player from one level and you get them all the way to the top level.
Yeah. Yeah, and you got to ride it. So, anyways, it comes with challenges. It is difficult. It is tough, and you got to give up a lot at home and all your own students at home. And it's definitely not what it's all cracked up to be. Spent lots of times in airports and hotels.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, look at Sean Foley.
Absolutely.
God, Foles is coming on the podcast actually, but you look at him, and Claude Harmon I think is coming on too. But
nice.
Yeah, you look at Foles, and he had everyone, and now he's doing very little on tour.
Pro sender.
Yes. Everyone needs a bit of trial wrist extension, but he doesn't chase a tool off anymore, that much, but by all means. So like I'm paraphrasing here, but he was coaching, people don't listen to this, Sean Foley's coaching, Justin Rose, Tiger Woods, Danny Willett, took Lydia Ko, a great story when you with Lydia Ko, a fantastic story. So anyways, hey Alex, it's been fun. We should call it up.
Man, it's been great.
I hope your allergies go away.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, going back to it just briefly, the only other thing I've got going on is I do a coach's mentorship online with Steve Astle, where I run a course.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me, share it. Lots of coaches listen.
Yeah, so we do an 8-week online course, which involves Zooms, personal Zooms, and group Zooms. Yeah, and it basically not only goes around getting you better as golf coaches in terms of your knowledge. Yeah, it gets you getting your business and your golf business to a level that you want to get it to. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because not only do we want to get better as coaches, we want to get our businesses better. And so it kind of coaches you through that whole process, gets your marketing right, makes sure your knowledge is sound enough, and helps you grow your business. So yeah, we do that as well. And that will run again in, I think, September time. We're going to do another one. We just done 2 8 weeks back to back, December through kind of April time.
And that'd be good. I've had a few conversations with Steve. I've had a few conversations with him, and when I was in Bali the time before last, and yeah, he owns. He's got the Instagram page, the Golf Coaching Business, I think it's called, and very wise man. He's just out there trying to help the coaches, because a lot of coaches out there now who are just kind of grafting away. And if you can get in touch with someone like Steve or an Alex to help you, right? And I mentor some people, coaches as well, who pay me for Zoom calls, is that it can kick a bit of life into you. You know, if you're a coach that's feeling a little bit against, you know, sitting there just pumping out 10 lessons in a row and you're getting a little bit depressed and, you know, it's coming out in your work, then these two types of guys Alex and Steve, can really help you shift gears and get a bit of excitement back in you and help you, because we've got a very big job as golf coaches. People fucking are so invested in golf, Alex. Like, players are so invested, and we cannot be reckless in coaching them. And there is no excuse today to have poor information. No excuse. You can get the Harvard of golf coaching out there for free online if you go dive deep for it. So there's no excuses for poor coaching. And if you're a student who feels like you're suffering from someone with a coach in that situation and you're not getting results, don't be afraid to go look for answers somewhere else. And Alex does online coaching too, right, Alex? You do some online lessons.
I do, yeah. I do plenty of online lessons on Skillist. I know Toby's on there as well, and a few other guys. Yeah, I mean, I've got students worldwide, as you have as well. Cool. So, I mean, I love helping students worldwide. It's great. It's really cool.
It's really cool. It's a lot of fun. You know, subscription model basically is, I want people to get away from the word golf lessons to golf coaching.
Yeah.
Golf coaching is a very, very big way of looking at it, because, you know, we understand if we've got an injury, you can't just go to the physio, get fixed, and it's gone. Unfortunately, you know what it's like. I'm the same. I want you just to fix me, but I've got to do the fucking exercises, and I don't want to do them.
Yeah, and it's going back to what we said near the start of the call, right? We're doctors, and you don't go to the doctors and expect one tablet to fix you. You take a course of tablets that will help you get better. Yes. And it's the same thing.
Yes, and that is to fix the issue, and then hopefully get off the tablets.
Exactly.
Hey, it's been a lot of fun, and I'll put some stuff in the show notes. People listening to this below, there'll be some show notes around where you can catch Alex on his Instagram, his newsletter, which he just pumps out, his website, the stuff with Steve Astle, and his Instagram and Skills page.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Tom.